Right now in Waller County, friends and family are gathering to remember 21-year-old Anggy Diaz. She was found dead this past Wednesday. Investigators say that her husband, Anggy Diaz, had killed her with a kitchen knife.
She was just 21, a bright, ambitious immigrant girl trying to build a life in Texas. No one could have imagined that just 3 months after saying "I do," she'd be found on the floor of her trailer, decapitated, her head left soaking in a bathtub, her body surrounded by blood and cigarette butts. But the most chilling part, the man accused didn't run. He didn't panic. He went for a beer and smiled on camera.
The newlyweds were married just a few months ago. We also have a live look now at the vigil happening. Reporter Maria Aguilera just spoke with Diaz's mother about her daughter's awful death. The body had been found in the couple's home. Her mother working to try and get her daughter's body back to Nicaragua. We'll have that interview at 10 o'clock.
So what really happened inside that small mobile home on January 11th, 2023? Why was Anggy Diaz full of life, full of dreams, silenced so brutally? And what dark secrets were hiding behind her husband's red hair and boyish grin? This is not a story about a murder. It's a story about how love, fear, control, and silence turned a marriage into a nightmare. And how sometimes the real danger is already inside the house. You are welcome to True Crime's Corner. Let's dig right into this case. Before her name became attached to one of the most gruesome murders in Texas history, Anggy Diaz was just a girl chasing a dream. A dream that began far from the quiet trailers of Waller County, across borders, across sacrifice, and across a life she thought she was finally beginning to build. Anggy was born in Nicaragua in October 2001 to a hard-working single mother who often crossed into Costa Rica just to put food on the table. Childhood for Anggy wasn't filled with excess, but it was rich in grit. Her mother, when she couldn't be there, relied on family, especially Anggy's aunt, who practically raised her. That woman would later be diagnosed with cancer, and it was Anggy who sent money back for treatment. That tells you everything about who she was. She had something most people lose on their way to adulthood: relentless hope. As a teenager, she studied accounting at the National Autonomous University of Nicaragua while caring for her aunt, still holding on to a dream bigger than her reality. When Anggy finally made it to the United States, it wasn't on some red carpet of opportunity. She arrived undocumented, young, foreign, and vulnerable, but she didn't wear it like a weakness. She took a cashier job at a local meat market in Waller County, Texas, and at the same time built her own little brand as a personal trainer online. Her social media was filled with energy and purpose. Quotes like, "Celebrate your own victories, because no one else knows what it took to get there." She had that glow, the kind of presence people don't forget. Even her boss said she was like a daughter. Even the customers noticed her light. But what most people didn't know was how quickly that light would be dimmed, how fast her American dream would twist into something unrecognizable, and how the very love she thought would secure her future would end it. On paper, Anggy Diaz didn't raise alarms. Born in 2001 and raised in the quiet stretches of Waller County, Texas, Jared was the younger of two sons in a well-known local family. His parents, Rodney and Lynn, were familiar faces in the community, hardworking, respected, and deeply involved in their sons' lives. Their property on Oak Hollow Lane was peaceful, tucked away from the noise of the outside world. It was the kind of setting that painted a picture of safety, wholesomeness, stability. Jared went to Waller High School and played football. He wasn't a standout star, but he had that local boy charm. A red-headed kid people nicknamed Rojo, with a big smile and a friendly nod. He had a job as an electrician, paid his dues. On the surface, he looked like a regular Texas young man just getting his life started. But when people looked a little closer, there were cracks. Not obvious ones, not the kind that screamed danger, just the quiet, uncomfortable kind. He could be moody, unpredictable. Some said he drank too much when he was out with friends. Others noticed how much he clung to familiarity, rarely straying far from his parents' home, even living in a mobile home just steps from their back door after getting married. Still, no one really questioned it. After all, what 21-year-old doesn't stumble a bit? But what no one said out loud, what they maybe didn't want to admit, was that Jared wasn't growing up. He was unraveling, and by the time anyone truly noticed, it was far too late. Because behind that everyday smile, something was boiling. And soon, it would boil over. From the outside, it looked like a young couple in love. Fast, passionate, and swept up in the thrill of something new. Jared had met 21-year-old Anggy Diaz while she was working at Chepe's meat market, where she stood behind the register with a quiet, ambitious spark. She was undocumented, newly arrived in Texas, and working hard to build a life she could be proud of. Jared was local, charming, and gave off the air of someone safe. It didn't take long. Roses showed up at her job. So did Jared. Again and again. Anggy's friends noticed it, how quickly things moved. The smiles on social media, the sudden shift in her focus, the way she spoke about him like he was everything. Then, in October 2022, just months after meeting, they got married. But the reactions behind closed doors? They weren't all joyful. Some friends were caught off guard. One close friend, who had helped Anggy plan her wedding to a previous boyfriend just months earlier, said she was shocked when Anggy suddenly called off that relationship, and even more stunned when she turned up married to Jared without warning. Her mother in Houston didn't even know the wedding had taken place. Her uncle asked her point blank, was this about legal status? Was she marrying him to avoid being deported? Anggy insisted it was love. Real love. And maybe it was, at first, but there were signs that not everyone believed it. Jared struggled to connect with her Spanish-speaking friends. At gatherings, he seemed agitated, unable to understand conversations. He'd leave early, he didn't engage. One friend remembered how Anggy would nervously try to translate for him in real time, trying to keep the mood light. What should have been a fairy tale romance already felt like a tightrope walk. And in the silence between those smiling Instagram posts, something unsettling was already beginning to take root. After the wedding, the smiles didn't fade from social media, but something else did. Anggy. She became quieter at work, nervous, distant. Her co-workers at the meat market noticed it first. The girl who used to laugh freely, who once talked about dreams and fitness clients and sending money to her aunt for cancer treatment, was suddenly shrinking behind the counter, not in attitude, physically. One day, she showed up with a dark bruise on her shoulder. When asked, she gave a fragile smile and brushed it off. That same day, she quietly told another friend, "I'll never get married again." Her boss, Ruth, who thought of Anggy like a daughter, later said it felt like watching a dream unravel in real time. She had seen Jared coming into the store frequently, too frequently, always watching, always checking. Jared had stopped sleeping in their trailer just a week before. His behavior was erratic, unpredictable. He told his mom he wanted to move back in with his parents. Anggy, it seemed, was finally setting boundaries. She had plans. She had hope. But not everyone believed she had the time. And as her bruises faded into new days, one question quietly screamed beneath it all. Was anyone really listening? Tuesday, January 10th, 2023, started like any other shift at the meat market. But something was different about Anggy Diaz. She walked in sometime between 1 and 1:30 p.m., and from the moment her boss saw her, she knew something was wrong. Her posture was tight, her face pale, her usual spark gone. When asked what happened, Anggy didn't hesitate. She said she and Jared had been arguing all night. She hadn't slept. And when she finally tried to take a shower, he assaulted her. A co-worker later recalled gently lifting Anggy's shirt to examine the bruise. It wasn't a stretch mark or a fall. It was a mark left by force, by control. And for the first time, Anggy didn't try to hide it. She said she was done, that she was leaving him. "I'm not going to live like this," she said. Her voice wasn't angry. It was exhausted. She had reached her limit. She told her friend they would talk more on Friday over coffee. She had that day off. She wanted to explain things. She couldn't say much at work. Too many ears, too many eyes. But her mind was made up. What she didn't know was that the clock had already started ticking. Some say you can sense when someone knows they're in danger. That day, Anggy looked like she was carrying the weight of a decision she was terrified to make, but even more terrified not to. By closing time, she walked out of the store, small, quiet, and brave in ways no one could measure. It would be the last time anyone outside that trailer ever saw her alive. And somewhere behind that last goodbye, a monster was waiting. January 11th, 2023. By mid-morning, the Diaz family's rural property in Waller County, Texas, was unusually still. Jared had returned from work in the early hours, slipped into the mobile home he shared with Anggy behind his parents' house, and hadn't come out since. For hours, nothing. No movements, no footsteps, just silence. Around 12:30 p.m., something shifted. Inside the main house, Jared's mother, Lynn, heard an unfamiliar sound. A phone ringing, but not in English. The text on the screen was in Spanish. It wasn't Jared's regular phone, and when she confronted him about it, his answers were strange and avoidant. Finally, he pulled it from his pocket. Lynn took one look and froze. "That looks like Anggy's," she whispered. Jared had Anggy's phone, and Anggy wasn't answering hers. Lynn's breath caught. Her son had been acting odd all week, erratic, restless. Just a few days earlier, he'd been hospitalized after calling 911 on himself in what sounded like a drug-induced breakdown. Now this. She didn't need more proof. Something was very wrong. She and her husband Rodney rushed out the door and ran toward the mobile home. There was no sound from inside, no response to knocks, no movement. When Rodney pushed open the door, the stillness was overwhelming. The living room was dim, undisturbed, until his eyes fell on what lay just beyond the entry. He told his wife not to come in. She came anyway, and then they both saw. We won't describe it here, not yet. Just know that it wasn't confusion anymore. It wasn't a mother's gut feeling or a father's discomfort. It was real. It was final. Jared was lying on the floor, crying. Rodney dialed 911 with shaking hands. His voice cracked as he told dispatch, "There's something wrong with my son." By the time first responders arrived, the property was no longer quiet. It was swarmed. What they walked into inside that small mobile home would stay with them forever. But for now, all we know is that it started with a phone ringing in the wrong language, and a mother who just knew. When deputies from Waller County Sheriff's Office entered the mobile home behind the Diaz residence, they didn't walk into a crime scene. They stepped into something far worse. The blood was immediate. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't subtle. It covered the floor like a message no one wanted to read. Anggy's body lay on the ground, lifeless. But what froze first responders wasn't just the violence. It was what was missing. Her head was gone. Jared was there, curled up, crying, saying almost nothing. He offered no fight, no flight, just stillness. But officers didn't rush to him first. They followed the blood. The trail of chaos curved from the living room, past a desk, into the bathroom. And that's where they found it. Anggy's severed head in the tub. The room was soaked in red. The air was thick. The bathtub, half filled with smeared water, held the final image they couldn't unsee. The knife, just feet away, still streaked with blood, lay by the bathroom entrance. Blood-stained clothes were tossed across the floor. Cigarette butts littered the area, as if someone had been sitting for a while, smoking, processing, or pretending to. There were bloody footprints going from the bedroom to the bathroom. A clear path. Like someone had walked that route over and over, as if pacing through a nightmare. But Jared? He was limp on the floor, not trying to run, not trying to explain. His face blank, his eyes wet. If this had been rage, it was spent. If it had been madness, it was now silence. What had happened inside this house was clear, but why? Was still lost. No note, no screaming neighbors, no sound to wake the morning. Just a girl, 21 years old, full of ambition, now dismembered in the place she called home. Investigators photographed the scene carefully. They collected the knife, swabbed for prints, bagged the clothes. But every physical clue led to the same conclusion. Jared had done this. Still, not a single piece of evidence explained the reason. Not yet. Inside the sterile walls of the interrogation room, Jared James Diaz slouched into the hard chair like someone who already knew his fate. No cuffs, no shouting, just quiet. A strange kind of quiet. The detectives didn't come in hot. They didn't need to. They had a dead wife in a tub. They had bloody footprints and a Spanish-language phone in Jared's pocket. All they wanted now was for him to say it. And he didn't, at first. Instead, Jared talked in circles. He mumbled, fidgeted, claimed he'd done meth once a few days ago, then said he hadn't, then said maybe he had. He said he didn't feel well, then said he was fine. It wasn't confusion, it was delay. But the investigators waited him out. They asked again, what happened that morning? Why was Anggy dead? Jared stared at the wall, blank, his mouth barely moving. And then he laughed. Not a loud laugh. A smirk, really. A twitch of the mouth at the edge of a lie. The kind of smirk that says, "You caught me, but I'm still not ready to admit it." And when they finally pressed, "Why? Why did you do it?" Jared shrugged and whispered something low and broken. "I wasn't there. That wasn't me." He blamed voices. He said he'd seen things on the screen, that something outside of him took over. It wasn't Jared, he said. It was something else. But when they pushed further, when they asked about the knife, about the bathtub, about Angie's hair being wet, he gave them more than they expected. He said she was awake when he came home. He said they argued. He said she grabbed a knife first. He took it from her. And then it happened. Yes, he cut her. Yes, he stabbed her. And yes, he cut off her head. He admitted he turned the shower on afterward, washed her hair, maybe to clean her, maybe to clean himself, maybe just to make it look like something it wasn't. He didn't cry during the confession. He didn't beg for forgiveness. Instead, he sat still, like someone reading a script written for them by something they no longer wanted to understand. But what was chilling wasn't just what Jared said, it was what he almost said. At one point they asked, "Did you ever think of hurting your parents too?" "No," he answered. And when they asked why not, he said, "Because I could control that." He could control it. He could stop himself from killing his parents. But not Anggy. What a monster. On July 31st, 2024, just over a year and a half after Anggy Diaz's murder, Jared James Diaz stood before a Texas judge and quietly pled guilty. There was no trial, no jury, no dramatic final defense, just a deal. 40 years, no chance of parole until 2043, and even then, nothing is guaranteed. He waived his rights to appeal, waived any shot at claiming insanity, waived the courtroom showdown his actions probably deserved. It was all over in minutes. No cameras, no emotional outburst, just a quiet, cold end to a life that had already destroyed another. But for the people who loved Anggy, that courtroom didn't bring peace. Her co-workers still remember the bruises on her shoulder. Her boss still remembers the day she came in, trembling, and said she'd had enough. And her aunt, who raised her like a daughter, stood before the court, tears sliding down her cheeks, and called Anggy an angel. She had joy in her heart, she said. She touched everyone, and now she's gone. There were no calls for revenge, no angry demands, just pain. Deep, quiet, aching pain. Her family told reporters, "We have no room for hate in our hearts." But even those words, graceful as they were, couldn't erase the brutality of what happened. Because what happened to Anggy wasn't just a tragedy, it was preventable. A rushed marriage, a history of violence, bruises hidden behind shirts, a 21-year-old girl who left behind a trail of red flags no one connected until it was too late. And Jared? He'll serve his time in a Texas prison, just one of thousands of inmates behind gray walls and razor wire. He'll be in his 40s if he ever gets a chance to taste freedom again. But even if he walks out one day, he'll never outrun what he did. Because no one forgets a man who smiled through a lie. A man who killed his wife, washed her hair, and left her head in a tub. This isn't just a story about domestic violence. It's about silence, about missed warnings, about young love that was never safe to begin with. And so, to every parent, friend, and neighbor watching this, if this were your daughter, would love still be enough to forgive? Let us know in the comments. Subscribe. We will see you in the next video.